Yo, this is your favorite friendly neighborhood Toronto, and I recently just watched Greg Miller and Blessing Adeoye Jr. on their PS I Love You podcast, which I love, by the way. I do watch it every week. Now, during that podcast, they do delve into a subject that I personally found very interesting, and that was, does PlayStation take risks? I wish I was there to join them in on the conversation and kind of go back and forth and just kick it. But here I am making a video, which is probably going to be the closest I get to doing so. So let's just start off right with it. Yes, I do think PlayStation takes risks with their games they develop and publish. It's true that the conversation is an interesting one to be had because I can see the validity in the arguments that believe PlayStation does not take risks. But I find that most of those arguments are to be painting the picture with a very, very broad stroke. One example of this is saying that it's just another third person in the game or that it's an action adventure game. All of which can be true, but do a disservice to the games themselves. The core of that argument is that the games are derivative and don't seem to be doing anything new or breaking new ground. The thing that I'm going to keep coming back to is the sum of all their parts. Before I get too deep into that, let's just address that third person argument, because gaming is an interactive medium and is almost always visual. To have anything rendered to the screen, you need to have a camera. The camera will give you a perspective, either first person or third person, and very rarely a second person perspective. The only game that I can even remember doing a second person perspective was a mission in Driver San Francisco. But the point I'm trying to get here is that all games, unless you're looking at a blank screen, is going to require a perspective. So mentioning it as a point, saying that Sony or any company in fact doesn't take risks, is pointless to me, because that would pretty much mean that every game that requires a character or object is playing it safe. Following that would be the arguments about the game being action adventure, which again paint the games with a very, very wide brushstroke. And essentially the patterns that I find that happen, and understandably so, is that there's a huge focus on the individual aspects of the game instead of how all those elements come together. Now, that complex formula of the mixture of the gameplay mechanics, graphics, story, world building, sound design, camera perspective, genre, and so much more makes these games exactly what they are. I also fall into the camp that believe that games are an art form, and art is very derivative as it's made to inspire and is sometimes made from being inspired. And that's not to say that there's no room for revolutionary ideals, but they don't come along very often, and even then, some revolutionary ideals are built upon old ideals done in new and unique ways. Like an analogy you can say is having 5 piano players who are standing in the line to play notes A, B, and C, after hearing the person that's in front of them play it. And from that, you could get 5 different sounds. Hell, shit, you could get 5 different moods. Like, one could play notes that are fast and the other can then play it slow. Another can mix it up and it could be fast and slow. Another pianist could then play them in a different order or even at the same time. Essentially what I'm trying to say here is that the components to each of their compositions are the same keys A, B, and C. But each pianist is deriving the notes that were played from the pianist before, but then put those components together in a different way to give you something new and unique. And I believe everyone has a right to their opinions to choose what metrics they use to say something is risky or not. But I've heard and read way too many people's opinions on this subject, and I find that some of these metrics could at this point be applied to almost all games that are in the industry. So it's funny to me that when a cover-based shooter is released, I hear people say gameplay is like Gears of War, but years before that, I was playing a game called Kill Switch on the PS2 that was a fast-paced cover-based shooter. I'm not sure exactly when the first cover-based shooter was made, but Kill Switch was my first experience with that gameplay mechanic. And then there's some who classify Fortnite and PUBG as the Battle Royale genre. When you really think about it, it's just a game mode in a third-person shooter. For Call of Duty, Warzone could be easily put in a playlist with Domination or TDM. The way these developers have implemented all the elements in the game together sets them apart from each other. Again, this is all to say if something is derivative, doesn't mean it's playing it safe. Like, are we really going to start calling the next racing game safe because there have been other racers that sold well, or the next open world safe because it's in a first or third person perspective? What about Nintendo? Are we going to start calling all their games not risky because they all have cartoonish art styles? Some of these design decisions also help build the identity of a brand, but PlayStation has continued to develop and also publish new IP like Horizon Zero Dawn, Dreams, Knack, Drive Club, Days Gone, Death Stranding, Ghost of Tsushima, Detroit Become Human, Until Dawn, and Spider-Man. And let's not forget, Spider-Man wasn't even a sure breakout at the time. There were many in doubt about this game, as there have been many Spider-Man games that were released that were far from great over the last decade. Sony took a risk on making Spider-Man as they believed they could do something amazing with it. And let's be clear, that's not to say that all games don't play it safe either. For me, it's when a gameplay or character design decision is made specifically with the business and not the art in mind. It's done because they know this is the best and safest way to make the return on their investment. And games like Dream and Concrete Genie are far from safe bets, or Death Stranding, where the gameplay loop is so heavily focused on the walking and difficulty of traveling through rough terrain in a very isolated world, is something that other publishers just wouldn't have never signed off on and spent tens of millions of dollars on as well. And yes, Kojima made it and he is a well-known entity, but Sony took a risk on him making something new and left field. And as we know, it wasn't a complete successful endeavor for them, which shows that the game wasn't really a safe bet the whole time. Although I loved it and spent over 100 hours in that game, I'm still 2 trophies away from getting my platinum, which I probably should go put that game in and complete. But there's also the point that I've heard that the recent games Sony has published over the last few years have been story-driven games. And the choice to make them open world, I think, has been chosen for creative reasons instead of, oh, let's check off that checklist of things that are going to sell and be safe. My reasoning behind that train of thought is that the games like Horizon Zero Dawn, Spider-Man, Days Gone, Death Stranding again, and the soon-to-be released Ghost of Tsushima, their worlds don't just exist as the setting, but also as a character in those games. One that demands attention and encourages explorations that provides additional lore. You can see games like God of War, Uncharted, and The Last of Us, where the characters are the major focus of those stories, and the game world is scaled back a bit, and the journey is more linear, and the pace is dictated more so by the developers. And then to elaborate on William Snyman from the PS I Love You community, who I'm paraphrasing, said, "These games offer new experiences and emotions that are tied to them. Because the deep sorrow and dread you feel from playing The Last of Us, it's not the same feeling that I get for playing Horizon or Days Gone, both of which are titles that I think were risk for Sony and studios creating them. As Guerrilla was widely known for his first-person shooter Killzone, and Sony Ben's first foray into large-scale AAA production for over a decade since they made Siphon Filter. Sony has also taken risks creating products to change the way that we interact with games. They have done this with the release of the PlayStation Portable, PlayStation Vita, PlayStation VR, the Eye of Judgment, and Move controllers, just to mention some. And not all of these things were met with great success, and some did find a following but couldn't grab the mainstream's attention. Now, blessing Merc City 69 and Game Over Greggy did touch on a lot of points I agree with. I just wanted to add in my 2 cents into the discussion and elaborate on more of the touch points that they were giving, and give some examples on the many risks Sony does make, and I hope they continue to keep making these risks, as I want to see more new IPs from this publisher. So far, only Godfall has been announced, which, to be honest, I'm not extremely excited for, but from the limited amount I've seen of it. But I don't want the PlayStation 5 era to be all about sequels, as both the PS3 and the PS4 have brought a lot of new IPs to the world. This is another topic that I plan to dive deeper into, but I'm gonna just leave that for another video. So guys, what do you think? Do you think I have a point, or am I just completely off base here? Also, what metrics would you use to determine if a developer or publisher is taking risks or playing it too safe? Let me know in the comments below. So thank you for those who made it through to the end of this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss any of the new videos that get uploaded. Again, every like is really appreciated, as it does a great ton in helping me grow this channel. I will have all the details where you can follow everything Toronto in the description. That's everything for now, so it's not bye. But I see you later on the next one. And I'm out!